Hello, today's video we're looking at marriage for immigration purposes, or marriage that has been entered into to remain or to enter the UK. Over the last few months, we have seen a spike in marriage interviews for immigration purposes. And the interview is to provide you with an opportunity to add to the information that you've already provided, correct what may appear to be contradictory information, provide more documentary evidence in support of your marriage, and convince the immigration that your marriage is not a marriage of convenience, it's not a sham marriage, it's not a bogus marriage, and it's not a marriage that has been entered into to deceive or to facilitate your leave to remain or your leave to enter. I must at this stage make it clear that it's not all marriage interviews that will lead to a refusal. And that is why it's very important that you prepare for your own marriage interview. Preparation does not mean that you don't know your spouse. Preparation means that you take it seriously and therefore you're putting in the effort to make sure that you don't contradict each other. There are many questions, and every marriage interview is different from the other. It is specific to your circumstances, and therefore it's fact specific. So the fact that somebody has been asked questions at the marriage interview does not mean that you will be asked the same question. But questions that I always tell my clients to look out for is background information. So both spouses must know their background. Usually when you meet a woman or a man that you love, you don't ask questions about their past, but it's important to know about their past. Their immigration background, their education background, their employment background, the family background is very key. Knowing about their parents, their spouse, previous spouses or ex-spouses, their children, if any, their siblings, and any other relevant relationship in their life. Also be mindful that the person who is settled, whether they are British or not, may have some information already at the immigration. You would have already provided the immigration with information about you when you completed your forms and when you sent your supporting documents. So just stop and check that every information that you've provided in support of your application can be corroborated. There are other questions about your living circumstances. So for example, if it's a marriage that is a few weeks old or a few months old, you will be expected to be living together as spouses. Inbuilt in the immigration law is a requirement that the marriage is genuine, a requirement that you will live together with your spouse as husband and wife. It's also a requirement that you're not deceiving the Home Office. The courts have said that the burden is on the Secretary of State or the Home Office to prove that a marriage is a marriage of convenience, a sham marriage, or a bogus marriage. The burden is also on the Secretary of State that the marriage was entered into to facilitate immigration, leave to remain, or leave to enter. However, the burden is not a heavy one, because if you give the Home Office or the immigration reasonable suspicion at the interview through your conduct and interaction with each other, through the information you provide and through the documentation that you provided, that there is a suspicion about the genuineness of your marriage, then they can refuse your application and say that your application is a marriage of convenience, a bogus marriage, or a sham marriage. A sham marriage or a marriage of convenience is a marriage that has been entered into purely for immigration benefit, and the parties do not have intention to live genuinely as man and wife. It is also a criminal offense under Section 24A of the Immigration Act, Section 24 of the 1999 Act, and Section 25 of the 2014 Act. These are all criminal offenses. And you must be aware that the previous video that I did about deception, if the intention is to deceive the Secretary of State, then your application can also be refused under Part 9 of the immigration rules, and that means that you will be banned for 10 years. My advice to you is to prepare. There's no substitute for preparation. Sit down with your spouse, ask about background information. This is the time to ask about their previous relationship, if they've been married before, who they married, where they married, the reason for the refusal. And for you, your marriage is determinative of whether or not this is going to be successful. So you need to remember the date of your own marriage. There are many people who don't remember the date of their own marriage. Which people attended the marriage, your witnesses, who signed for you, where the marriage was, who proposed, what was the words that was used, whether there was engagement, whether there was celebration, whether there was honeymoon. All these are important questions that you need to answer when you go to the marriage interview. But let me put your mind at rest. When you go, they will explain to you the purpose of the interview. It is your opportunity to tell the interviewing officer whether you're well or unwell, whether you have a psychiatric problem or a memory problem, whether you have a psychological problem, and whether you are nervous. If you're nervous, you can ask for the interview to be postponed. Because if you're not confident that you'll be able to remember everything, you don't have to go through the interview for them to use the discrepancies between the two of you as a reason to find that your marriage is a marriage of convenience. At the tail end of the interview, you can ask the interviewing officer to read over the notes before you sign. Don't just sign and approve the interview records. Most of these interviews are recorded. You can also ask for a recording, or if it's handwritten, ask for a contemporaneous record of the interview notes there. And when you come, write to them again and request it. And you can also do a SAR request for the interview record. I hope this is helpful. However, if you need any more advice, please do not hesitate to contact us on the numbers above. You may also go on our website, www.bwfsolicitors.com, and you will have a lot of resources to help you prepare for this interview.